If you are like me, which for the sake of argument we'll say is true, it feels like you just wake up one day and the whole world is this new thing. You looked around and it felt like your day of birth, where you didn't recognize who and where you were. Then suddenly you are thrust into the world to figure it all out. Congratulations. Welcome to life. Your life has just begun and there's so much for you to conquer. But wait, there's a plan. The ironic thing about this is that you had nothing to do with any of it at this point. Your parents did the magical two steps, sang a few oohs and ahs, and there you were 9 months later. That is an excerpt from the second chapter of my book, One Day at a Time, called The Woes of Life. And this chapter is really about all of the things that happen in your life. And it feels like everything hits you all at once, especially when you are trying to work through things, work towards something. And life's inevitable woes can tend to break you apart or slow you down in some way, shape, or form. So that's what this chapter is about. Now, let me tell you, I've had my share of woes in life, and I think anyone's journey wouldn't be complete without talking about some of the woes and some of the things that held them back. For me, I always go back to the beginning of this journey because it started at birth, whether you think about it or not, or are ready to think about it. When you came into the world, there was nothing given to you other than your mother or your father or whoever is your caretaker. You were given their arms, maybe to suckle on or a bottle, and you were just left to your own devices to figure it out. The communication language that you had could barely be understood. Your parents knew if you were crying, you were, hungry or upset or you felt bad, but they didn't know exactly what. They had to figure it out, and so did you. So I say this woes of life started at birth when we came out the womb, and then we were smacked on the butt or held upside down, fripped and frolicked, flipped on our feet. Pricked on our feet and all of those things, right? And we knew none the wiser what was going on, but there was a plan for all of it. We just didn't know it. But what we did know was we were being ramshacked and tossed about. And so the woes of life begin at the beginning of life. And as you progress to adulthood, the woes seem to woe. They seem to woe. And that is what I want to talk about. So this is the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts, my life, my way. So again, back to the woes that be woeing. I learned at a very young age that things were not always going to be rainbows, sunshines, kittens, and puppies. I learned that at a very early age, and I suspect that you all have learned the same thing from your parents, right? You wanted something, your parents were like, absolutely not. You talk too much, your parents told you, listen, if you keep on talking like that, somebody's going to knock you out. You learn very quickly in life that it wasn't all going to be great and you couldn't just do everything that you wanted to do just because you felt like it, right? But when you're a kid, you seemingly have the world at your disposal when you're a kid. You get to do whatever you want to do. You almost get away with saying what you want to say. It's like, oh, it's just the baby being the baby. And so that sort of thing happens. But something about crossing over into that early adolescence. When you cross over into that early adolescence, it is like the veil has come up, and now responsibility is the conversation. And responsibility is the key because now, even though you are still in this very formative place in life, you are expected to figure out what your next steps are. And your parents, if they're anything like mine or anybody else's, they're pushing you to figure that out so you can get out. They've had enough of you, right? Probably if you're 10 or 11 years old, they love you, but you're riding the ticker on the clock, and they are like, all right, now you're 10. I got you. I'm stuck with you for another 8 years minimum. Now there are situations where your parents do show up and the loved ones in your life do show up and they give you unwavering and undying support, and you have that all the way through college and all of those things. But I contend in the book that that is the few and not the many. That is the few and not the many, because most of us have to fight tooth and nail for the things that we want. We have to fight tooth and nail to pay for college if we go to college. If we want a computer, we've got to get that. Cell phone bills, cars, all of those things. So the majority of us, I would contend, had my experience where we had to get it how we could get it, right? And if you were on that other side and you had the support financially, emotionally, and all the things, great. Harvest that. I mean, harvest it. Well, you did harvest it, hopefully, but harness that and continue to lean into it and appreciate it because that's a really good thing. And it's not the majority of us. I want you to know it's not the majority of us. But again, I talk about in the book, those are two very, very likely situations that happen. There are those that have the people that do everything for them and that are okay with supporting them and paying for things along the way. And then there's the parents that's like, I don't have it. And if I did have it, I probably wouldn't give it to you, not out of being spiteful, some out of being spiteful, but not out of necessarily being spiteful, but sometimes just out of like, I gotta safeguard this for me and my household, me and my man, or me and my husband or wife or whoever, they them. They safeguarded it, but and that was my story. And so that makes for a very tedious journey when you are becoming an adult and you realize that you are on your own financially, mentally, emotionally, and all the things. My mom was there and I could talk to my mom and reach out to my mom, but her limitations in some areas of her life that she hadn't made it to college or she hadn't made it to the level of roles in corporate and things like that I had, she couldn't help me. At beyond some point, it was like, listen, I could give you my best guess on some of this stuff, but son, you on your own. You are in uncharted territory for me. So it wasn't for a lack of her wanting to or wanting the best for me. She was just confounded by her limitations and her experiences, just as we all are. There are some things that I can't show up for my own child. She's 22, and there are some things that I'm like, well, and she's a she, so and I don't have that experience, so I can't give her that already. But there's some things when my daughter calls, I'm like, listen, honey, please call your mom and ask her about that. I have no idea, or it's been so long now, I don't even remember. Because that's the thing that happens too when we are in life. We go through things, and a lot of us try to stay connected, right? Because we don't want to give off the impression that we are too good, or we have gone or accelerated too far that we don't remember the struggle, or when we had to really get it out of the mud, as they say. So some of us some of us get removed. It's just the reality of it. When you get out of it and you wanted to get out of it, sometimes you don't forget about it, but it's in the back of your mind. And hopefully you are existing in the presence and the fullness of what you are doing in this moment instead of leaning backward, and resting in the old. So all of those conventions, right, that I talk about are part of those woes in life, parent limitations, financial limitations, while you're trying to do something great. Let me share a little bit with you, and then you have to read the book for the rest. Make sure you get your book. It is available for pre-order on Kindle, and also the michaelexperience.com. You can get the Kindle ebook version. You can get the paperback hardcover over at the michaelexperience.com on pre-sale, and on May 15th. You can purchase from Amazon as well as the .com website, and you can get your books. Okay, but make sure you get that pre-sale. Make sure you get your book because you're going to want these stories. They're going to be very life-changing for a lot of people, especially if you are navigating a season of just becoming or becoming again, as I've said before, because it's a lifelong journey of figuring out who you are, right? And you have to figure out who you are at different phases of your life. And there are some phases I can contend with that you forget to do the discovery part. You forget to do the intrinsic part of the work and the figuring out. And so you suffer your identity, your spiritual identity, your inner identity suffers because of it. And so this book, day at a time, excuse me, one day at a time, is going to help you get back to you. Okay. Just like I got back to me. But back to the story at hand. I remember going to college, and I was so excited about going to college, not because I wanted to go, because I didn't. I didn't want to go to college. I was like, it just seems like a waste for me. I feel like I'm smart enough. I feel like I got all the know-how. I don't need to go to college. But I knew that the only way to well, let me not say I knew. And let me not say that I knew. I was taught that if you go to college and you get the degree, you would be rich. You would be rich. That's what I was taught, and some of you were probably taught the same thing too. So let's back up a little bit. You remember those of you all that are old enough, and maybe some of you all now that are in school. I don't know if they still do this, but the counselors used to pull us in somewhere between sophomore and junior year. Ooh, that was good. They used to pull us in somewhere between sophomore and junior year, right? And they would talk to us about all of the possibilities. Now, when I was in school, this was the late 90s, early 2000s. When I was in high school, they pulled us in, gave us this chart, this little brochure like thing of all the jobs that were going to be in demand by like 2010 or something. I think it was like 2010. So it was like a 10-year bit, and it was all these jobs and that people were going to make money in these jobs, and this was the American dream, and you were going to get one of these jobs and you were just going to be uber successful. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go to college, but let me look at this list. And so there was a lot on the list. There was like auto technology for people who are mechanics, technicians, and that sort of thing. There were people in the nursing field, of course. There was business administration and management. That was for sure on the list or whatnot. And then there were a couple others I can't remember, but I said, "Oh no, I don't want the rest of them. I don't know." So I said, "I'm going to pick business management or business administration and management because I said I know how to do that. I've already done that before. I've been doing that for a long time. I had already been doing it, working in small businesses, and I was like, I can do that. I can do that." Listen, I got my degree in 2010. Actually, I graduated in 2010 with my degree, my associates in business administration. And I just knew it. I said, all right, I'm about to get the job and I'm about to make the money. Y'all, I didn't get a job. And I still don't know that I've gotten a job with that particular degree, nor the other one that I ended up with. I don't know that I don't remember anybody ever asking. I think one job verified that degree in the time. They took me through the parchment portal and stuff like that. And I had to verify both of my degrees and stuff. But I think one job actually verified that information or needed it for whatever reason. Every other one that I had never even mentioned it. And I was like, now wait a minute. Now I had to go and get student loans for this, right? Many days I was eating turkey sandwiches on 97-cent bread, right? A $2 pack of budding. Is it budding? Is budding the one? Is budding was it the budding one? Anyway, so the budding one had you could get the little packs. At the time I think they were 59 cents. It may have had, I don't know, 5 or 6 slices of meat in it. It was, I think it was called budding, something like that. But they had little packs, and then they had a $2 or $3 pack. And so if I had enough money, I get the $3 pack, right? That way I could stretch it. But there were many days I had the 59-cent one, or whichever one was around a dollar. I would buy one of those or something like that, or two of those or whatnot. And I would make me a turkey salad. And they were very thin sliced. If you know what I'm talking about, you know. They were very thin sliced pieces of meat, those things. And so, you could literally take one of those little pouches, put it all on there to make a sandwich and still feel like you don't have enough meat. And I would go get a 97-cent loaf of bread from I don't know, Walmart or wherever I went, Kroger. I would get the cheapest bread I could get. When you get the bread that's some of their bread is okay, but some of it'd be a little stiffer, but that's okay. My stomach could handle it at the time. So I would be eating turkey sandwiches with that budding lunch meat and with just mustard on it, and that's what I would eat. And then when I found out about ramen noodles and how good they tasted, I was like, oh goodness, you can get a box of noodles for like a dollar. Like, whew, listen here. And when I found out that you could get a box of noodles for a dollar, I said, oh, sign me up. I get me a couple of them boxes. It was about a dollar and some change at the time. But I survived, for the most part, off of budding lunch meat on 2 slices of bread with some mustard and and ramen noodles. And so coming out of the struggle, or coming out of the woes of it, uh, it felt like a slap in the face when I finally finished, because I was like, you mean to tell me I scrimped and I saved and I didn't do the shopping thing? Because I've always loved to shop. I have always loved to shop. And I was like, you mean to tell me that I gave up those things and ate that food the way that I did, and I can't get the job with the money, and nobody cares about this degree? Nobody cares about the degree. Nobody cares about the degree. I said, okay, all right. I got these student loans for it now. I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So something in me says, well, you know what, Michael? Go back to school. Go back. Just go back because you have an associate's. It's time to get a bachelor's or a master's. You know what I mean? Like, let's do it. You know what I mean? That's going to position you. Bachelor's degrees are right up there, right? So imagine 2010. So I'm like, okay, great. 2000, and I go right back to school after that, and I'm studying. I didn't somewhere between graduating the first college and going to the next. I decided I wanted to try my hand in journalism. So here I go switching my major to journalism. Now, y'all, that wasn't a part of the plan. It wasn't part of anybody's plan. My mom, anybody who had a conversation with me was like, listen, you go into business, that's a sure thing. You're a smart boy, you'll figure it out, you know. But here I am. For whatever reason, I'm like, I'm going to school for journalism. I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna try it and see what happens. I went to school for journalism and I enjoyed it. I truly enjoyed journalism. The reporting pieces of it, not so much. Those weren't really my things because I never really wanted to be on camera. I never really wanted to be on camera, not in that kind of a way. Anyway, I was okay with it if I had to, but because I remember taking a communications class in which we would do certain projects, and we would learn how to operate the camera, and we would learn how to do graphics and things like that. And so that stuff was fine to learn, but I was like, this isn't going to be my life. Like, I'm not going to be a news anchor anywhere or anything like that. Now, mind you all, social media at this particular time it's out there, but it's kind of new. You know what I mean? It's kind of new. I don't know anything about YouTube. I don't even know when YouTube started, but I don't know anything about YouTube at that particular time. It may have been out for a few years. I don't know. But all of this influencer thing wasn't even really a thing at the time. There were people on there, but it wasn't what it is today. So there was nothing that would hint to me that this would be a thing. I would be doing a visual podcast on YouTube. Well, like I'm doing now. This is a visual, and we're going to keep this going. But I didn't think I would have a podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I didn't think I would have a podcast on all of the platforms: Pandora, iHeart, Amazon, the Apple Music, all the things. I didn't think I would have a. I didn't know nothing about it, so none of it was a part of the plan or the trajectory. However, I did grow up seeing Oprah Winfrey do her talk show, and I loved her style of talk show. Now, there were others that I'd watch because my mom loved to watch those growing up, and on free TV, you get to watch all the Sally Jeffy Up Raphael, the Ricky Lakes, and the Mari if you were into that kind of thing, and the Jerry Springer and all that stuff. But then there was Oprah. And Oprah had a very different approach to it for me. So I had always watched Oprah, but I didn't really connect with it. I didn't connect with it in the sense that I was going to be doing the thing, or that would lead me to do what I'm doing now. I didn't think any of that was going to happen. So I take journalism. Let me get back to the story. So I take journalism, like I said, right after 2010, I jumped right back into college. So it may have been the tail end of, I think I graduated in May. I went right back to school. So the end of 2010, fall semester. So I went right back to school, went to the next university or whatnot, Indiana University, IUPUI, Indianapolis. And so I go there and I'm like, oh, I'm switching my program. So I switched to journalism and I'm doing that. And I'm enjoying all of the creative writing. I'm enjoying the business writing. I'm enjoying the technical writing. All of that I am enjoying, y'all. I am having the time of my life in this situation. However, there was a light that went on in my head that was like, Michael, you enjoy this stuff, but if you don't want to be like a news anchor, because that's all I thought about at the time. It didn't connect nothing about Oprah, nothing about social media, mind you. I was like, well, I don't like. Well, I'm not going to be doing that, in my mind because I can't see it, just as like I can't see the social media. So I'm like, Michael, you have to do the practical thing. Like, let's get practical. Let's get back to it. Finish your degree in business if that's what you're going to do, or figure out how to further specialize in a business, in a business industry or segment that you can make money in. So then I have this idea that I am going to do marketing, right? I'm like, I'm going to do marketing because I believe that I can talk a product up and I do believe that I can give a mean presentation. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to switch my major to marketing. I switched my major to marketing and I start taking the marketing curriculum. And immediately I was like, oh no. I was like, no, 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 no. There was a lot of, there was a lot in there about advertising that I like the process of advertising when it's finished, but all of the behind the scenes work that happens that goes into advertising, I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I was like, I'm not finna do all of that, and then learning graphics and stuff like that. I was like, I can learn anything, but I don't see myself doing that every day for the rest of my life. Like, I just don't see myself doing that. I don't know what at that point, I didn't know what I saw myself doing for the rest of my life, but I knew it wasn't that. So I was like, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and finish this semester out, and then we're gonna go ahead and switch right back to business administration because that's the safer bet. That's the more practical bet. So I go back to the business administration program. I failed my first calculus class. I'm like, oh dear God, no math. I hate, listen, complex math is just not my thing. When you start adding A's, B's, and C's and Pythagorean this and that, I'm like, listen, I don't know where I'm going to use this in life. A plus B plus C equals XY. Uh-uh. No, just give me the regular stuff. Give me the regular stuff. I just need to be able to account for my money and all of my assets and things and all of that. And then you get to accounting one and two and three. And I'm like, oh. So anywho, I'm back in the business administration program. I failed the first calculus class. I think I got a D minus. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, am I gonna make it? Is the math class gonna be the thing that holds me up? So I persist for a while. Then I switch colleges and all of these things, right? Finances are in shambles. I've taken out more student loans. Now I'm like, I've wasted 2 years of student loan money. I've wasted 2 years of student loan money on stuff that had nothing to do with the degree that I was going to school for. I was like, oh, So then I switched colleges. I said, you know what? I'm going to switch colleges. And I did that. So without going through that journey, because I always tell people this, it is just a funny joke for me. People might not think so, but I went to 5 colleges, but I only graduated from two. And I just they're like, oh my God, you're educated. That's well, I am educated, but I only graduated with 2 degrees. So, anywho, that is what it is, but they cost money. But not only did they cost me money, they cost me time and energy, and also the things that I had to go through as I was getting them because life doesn't stop because I'm going to college. You know what I mean? There is no magic light that comes on in my family all of a sudden is just picture perfect and everybody gets along and all of my friends are holding my hands and singing kumbaya and trying to date and all of that. So pile on, right? My family, there's stuff going on there with my mom and my stepdad. My brother and sister have their things going on, which a lot of that is just that them or whatever, but it's noise at a particular time. I'm a dad, so I got that going on as my kid is getting older, and I'm trying to pay rent, and I'm working two jobs, and I'm going to school full time when I tell you the woes kept woeing, when I say it was anything from my account being overdrawn for a bill that I didn't expect, it's anything from I one weekend I said, you know what? I owe myself something and I am going shopping. And I went shopping and I think I was gone for the weekend. I think I was gone for a weekend. And I went shopping and I came home and I had the bags in my hand and I really felt like I was, ready to take on the world. And I flipped the switch and my lights were off. I flipped the light switch and my lights were off. I remember calling my best friend at the time and being like, I need to come over. And he was like, oh, okay, come over. Now I knew if I called him, I could spend the night at his house or whatever, because that's just who we were with each other. So, I'm over there at his house or whatever. And, he's like, oh, no, no, no. I said, friend, my lights got cut off. And he's like, your lights got cut off. I'm like, yeah, I had, spent the weekend out and I had went shopping and I thought I had put like $20 on the light bill, but apparently I did not. And so now I have to wait for them to cut the lights back on. And so you guys, for those of y'all that may not understand that, at that time, the you would get your light bill, and there was always a portion that you could pay, to avoid disconnection. And so I would always put $20 on it. That was my thing every month. I would put $20 on it. Now, in all, fairness and reality and all that stuff, my bill was probably in an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment with a den at the time, $60. I want to say my light bill was probably $60. So paying $20 of it really isn't like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like some big feat or anything like that. It was just literally a portion. So I paid my little $20 every now and again, maybe 40, just to keep it, going. But yeah, my lights had got cut off, and so I went to my best friend's house and I spent a day or two over there, and then I went back home. But I mean, anything and everything can happen, while you're trying to live life and while you feel like you're doing the right thing. Because I was a person with two jobs, right? Taking care of my daughter long distance. Well, not technically long distance, but it was long distance. I lived right outside of the city that she lived in. And I'm trying to navigate that while also dating. And, my dating situation, oh, if I can tell you, make sure that you stay tuned in for my journey, right? Because when I say one day at a time, I had to tell myself one day at a time, because trying to date, even when you feel like you have things together, is a big feat to accomplish. And for me, I just kept meeting people who I wanted to really just invest in, you know what I mean? My time, my energy. And I wanted to grow with everybody. At some point, every guy that I encountered, I thought that was going to be the one then. You know what I mean? We would spend time together. They would make it past, what was the thing at the time? I think 3 months was my rule. I had like a 3-month rule with guys for a while. And so once they made it to the 3 months, I was like, okay, you're gonna be invested. And that 3-month rule was a result of meeting people, and sometimes you just don't work out for whatever reason. And I'm like, okay, so I instituted a 3-month rule just because I was like, okay, that's kind of, it just seems clean and all that. But I just kept meeting people who were nice enough, but for whatever reason, young, maybe still figuring out life, probably, we just couldn't get on the same page. Like, I'd have people where we would feel like we were moving in a very loving and connected space, and then next thing you know, they're off, you know, popping and dropping it somewhere else, and I'm like, now, wasn't you just in my apartment, laying on my bed, funking up my sheets? And now you're over here. And so it was a series of that, you know what I mean? But all of that contributes to those woes, because it affects your mental, it affects your being, your presence in the spaces that you are going into, your mind being occupied with them. And so one of the things in there is that I just was like, at some point I was like, emotionally, I don't know that I can do this journey having somebody who is not grounded. And we're all young, but I was like, I don't know if that I can do this journey with somebody who's not grounded and who isn't looking to grow, because for my mental well-being, it's just not working. It's not working. I spend way too much time at that time. I was spending way too much time thinking about where things went wrong, thinking like, okay, maybe I'm just too rigid, because I was kind of the person that people thought was like, oh my God, you're a little stuck up and you just don't seem like you want to get into the things. And there are just some things that I wasn't into. I just wasn't into certain things. And there would be times where I would try with people, and then there would be times where people did not understand that I had to go to school and I had to study. I can remember many nights where I got into arguments because it's like, you're not showing up for me. I'm having people over and you're nowhere to be found, and everybody's starting to think that you don't exist. And I'm like, well, do these people not have other family members that have gone to college if they haven't gone themselves? Like, does nobody know that midterms And finals are a very big thing. And for somebody like me, I need to focus. I need to focus in, especially on the things that I am not that great at, especially those math things, particularly those math things. Everything else I think came very easy to me. Um, a lot of the sciences came very easy until, and I don't know why I had to take human anatomy in college. I was like, now this is some bunk. This is some bunk. Now y'all probably like, Michael, what is some bunk? That's back from the '90s. That means that this ain't it. Okay, for today's term, that wasn't it. That wasn't the move. And so I was like, why do I have to take this? And I'm having to understand the difference between the tendon and the veins and all the things. And I'm like, this kind of vein versus that kind of vein. And I'm like, listen, and that's how I knew I wasn't supposed to be a doctor. My grandmother used to say, my great grandmother used to say that I was gonna be a doctor, Dr. Thea. Listen, I'm gonna be an unlicensed doctor, no medical, but ain't no way, baby. What am I, you child? I'll be done gave you a shot in your thyroid, and you didn't even have a thyroid when you came. That's how jacked up it would be. You a man with a thyroid, as a matter of fact. Now I know enough to get away. Yeah, I know myself, enough to get around. I know my way around enough. But I'm just trying to illustrate for you a point. I don't think that's gonna work for me. Uh, but again, having these psychological things affect you while you're doing it, especially the romantic thing and the love thing, can really get in the way and can really stop you. Like I said, I get all involved and I want to feel like we are together in this and we are building, and then we're not. And yes, some of it is being young, but also some of it is just being disciplined enough to say like I can't do this. This is not for me. Somebody else may be able to compartmentalize, but I just couldn't in that way. And so I, for whatever reason during this time, also allowed lines to cross with a friend, and that affected me in a very different way as well. Like that was just like, oh my goodness. And I really in that moment learned like, okay, when you cross that line, it is not what you think. I went into it thinking that it was gonna be the same. We were just gonna be for the most part, I was like, it's gonna be the same, except there's just gonna be a romance factor. So this is a win. Absolutely not. There's like a switch that flips, and then yeah, there are a whole different list of expectations and stuff. So but navigating that while things are happening, I talked about the bill situation. I got into a lot of financial situations, like negative accounts and, just bills. It took me in all kinds of places, getting a car payment that was much too much, at the time. It seemed right, but much too much. And one thing just seemed to lead to another. Breakups emotionally, college, and then at some point my financial aid had a break in my financial aid, and I had to do some things to get some money. Now I didn't have to do any things like that. Let me roll back, because they're like, wait a minute, Mike, you had to do some things for some money. I didn't have to do any things like that. You know what I mean? I didn't have to, do the things, but I definitely had to find other ways and means of making money outside of the two jobs I already had. And then, of course, family situations that creep in there too. But this chapter, Woes of Life, um, it really takes you on a journey with me. It takes you on the car troubles. It takes you on the breakdown in the various relationships during that particular time. It it takes you through realizing that the American dream that we were all sold and told about was more like a recurring nightmare. And at every moment where you feel like you are going to do things right and you're going to get ahead, you start to notice that you're on a hamster wheel, right? And the harder, the faster you keep running, the more you find yourself just stuck in motion doing it, spinning your wheels. And it's like, how come I'm doing all of this and I'm getting nowhere? It feels like I'm getting nowhere. And when you do get somewhere, you feel like you are going two steps forward and falling 5 steps back. And I really do mean that. You're like, okay, yes, all right, I'm making headway. And then something happens that pushes you all the way back to the starting line. So the woes of life takes you through, breaking down those situations, the many feelings that were involved in it, and just how, you navigate life when every single thing that you can think imaginable and some when everything hits at once. So that is chapter 2 of the book. That is chapter 2 of the book. Make sure that you get over to Kindle if you're a Kindle reader and you do the pre-sale today. And then the release is May 15th for everywhere, paperback, hardcover. But make sure you get those. But pre-sale the book right now on Kindle and the michaelexperience.com, and make sure that you walk into, your journey of discovery and becoming, or and becoming again and again and again. But make sure that you walk into your journey understanding that the way to get through it and the way to get to the other side is to take it one day at a time. All right. So, this has been the Michael Experience Podcast. I thank you all so much for the time today. And I want you to go out there and think about the woes in your life right now. Think about the woes in your life. Think about the missteps that you've had. Think about what you feel like is causing you to backtrack. And I want you to sit with it for a moment. Just sit in it. See if there is a pattern, right? See if at any moment you told yourself, or your intuition kicked in and told you, maybe I should do something different. And if you realize that there was a moment of pause, I want you to take that moment of pause and digest it. What was the thing that I could have done different, or I wanted to do different? And apply it today, because it's not too late. The chance is, right, or the thing is, you will probably come back to that situation at another point in time because the lesson wasn't learned. And so until you have digested and sat with it, and accepted and acknowledged, and then took action, that is going to be your meantime situation later on down the road. So my hope is that you sit with that today, find that moment of pause as you look back, and then figure out how you can implement that going forward, one day at a time. All right, go out there and love on yourself before you can love on somebody else. And I will see y'all on the next one. If y'all are wondering why I'm talking about seeing me, we are on YouTube in a video format. So if you are listening wherever you're listening to your podcast and you want a visual, get over to YouTube at the Michael Experience and Michael Experience Podcast. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.